Good afternoon. My name is Stacey Dawson. I am with the Washington County OSU Extension. I am serving as the Family and Consumer Science Educator here in Washington County. I've been doing a program with the library for a couple weeks now on healthy living. We've covered topics such as walking with ease, finding ways to stay fit while you sit, and gut health. And then today we're going to cover a little bit on diet and inflammation. So when we go into talking about that, we're going to just kind of define what inflammation is. Inflammation is a set of symptoms that include pain, swelling, heat, and redness of an affected organ or tissue. It is the normal way that the body's immune system responds to injury, infection, or attack. So I know that sometimes we kind of hear inflammation and maybe it doesn't have the best word association. Sometimes we think of inflammation as being bad and painful, and it's not always what we want. But realistically, inflammation is our body's way of helping us heal, helping us fight infection, and helping us to stay well. There is an increased discussion regarding another form of inflammation that is not aligned with pain and is referred to as chronic low-grade inflammation or silent inflammation. Um, there are links between diet, the inflammatory process, and diseases. And these are topics that are currently of intense research. So a lot of the chronic diseases that we see are often linked to inflammation, and we will kind of go over those a little bit more as we go through the presentation. Let's talk about the immune system, though, for a minute. The immune system is the body's natural defense mechanism, so it is your first line of defense when it comes to staying well. It protects the body against foreign substances. So things like your bacteria, the viruses, toxins, food proteins that cause allergies, and so on. So it's how we're going to stay healthy. If the immune system fails, then the body becomes vulnerable to disease. The immune system includes a lot of different working parts. The physical barriers. So it's like I said earlier, it's the body's first line of defense against these foreign substances. So these physical barriers that we have are your skin. Your skin's going to protect you, the mucous membranes that we have, and then your gastrointestinal tract. The organs that are involved in the immune system are your thymus gland. They make your T cells, and your bone marrow that make your B cells, and then your spleen. Your spleen is important. Yes, you can live without it, but yes, you need it because it does help with production of antibodies. Your tonsils, your adenoids, your lymph nodes, and then again, your gastrointestinal tract. The tissues involved with the immune system are your mucous membranes, your lymphoid tissue, and then you have your lymphatic vessels, and then you have your cells. Just your cells alone, they have defense proteins. You have leukocytes, which include your neutrophils, macrophages, different things like that. Then we also have our lymphocytes, the natural killer cells, and your B cells and T cells that we talked about previously. So now we're going to talk about acute and chronic inflammation. Like we said, acute inflammation is actually what we call beneficial. It's not a bad thing. The immune system responds to infection or injury resulting in inflammation. So when we have that infection or we have an injury, we may have inflammation. That's fighting the infection or injury, and then it stops. So your immune system responds, and then you recover. So maybe when we cut our finger or something, it might turn red, it might get a little warm, it might swell up a little bit, but that is just your body fighting that injury. So some of these things, this is not at all a bad thing. Chronic inflammation, now that's what we would go into the harmful side of it. This is when the low-grade inflammation persists. Chronically inflamed tissue produce bioactive compounds that sustain the inflammatory process. So low-grade inflammation can actually suppress your immune system, your immune response. So we're lowering our chances of fighting, it's suppressing it, it's keeping it from doing its job. So if it's constantly turned on at a low level, then the immune system gets used to it and there is no response. So you have that immune system response, but you don't really have that recovery. So, just something else to kind of think about. Some chronic diseases that we see when we talk about obesity. And then the next couple of slides, we're going to talk about a couple of these more in depth, but many diseases, especially chronic diseases, reflect an underlying inflammatory process such as obesity. And that's one that we're going to look at here shortly. Metabolic syndrome, atherosclerosis, and we'll look at that one as well. Type 2 diabetes, hypertension, certain types of cancer, and rheumatoid arthritis. It says others, but in the other category, that may include osteoarthritis, non-alcoholic fatty liver, and inflammatory bowel syndrome, so Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis. Those are some other chronic diseases that we often see as a reflection of some inflammation. So like I said, we're going to talk a little bit about obesity and inflammation. Chronic inflammation accompanies obesity. So your adipose or your fat tissue is metabolically active and produces compounds that promote inflammation. So as your adipose, your fat tissue fills up, the fat migrates to other tissues like your muscles and your liver, which is what we call ectopic fat. So the combination of increased ectopic fat and inflammation disrupt your normal glucose and lipid metabolism, which leads to insulin resistance. It can also lead to elevated blood lipids and high blood pressure. And these last two things are known to promote inflammation. So this cluster of symptoms is known as metabolic syndrome, which increases your risk of type 2 diabetes, atherosclerosis, and cardiovascular disease, so heart disease, hypertension. So all the things that we saw on the previous slide, there is just, as you can see, there's a lot of connection to how all of these things kind of go together. So it is a connection, and so it kind of feels like one thing may lead to another, and so that's why paying attention to your body is so important. Atherosclerosis and inflammation. Atherosclerosis is initiated by minor but chronic damage to the blood vessel wall. Blood vessel damage increases the permeability of the blood vessel wall and initiates an inflammatory response. And the immune system responds by sending macrophages. So then also included in that, the LDL cholesterol becomes trapped inside the blood vessel wall. So free radicals are produced during inflammatory response, which oxidizes the LDL cholesterol. The macrophages take up the oxidized LDL cholesterol. So this is where we swell up with oxidized LDL cholesterol, and then it eventually becomes plaque. So that's where we have that buildup. So the free radicals produce the oxidized LDL cholesterol. The macrophages take that, they swell up, and then that's where we start to get our plaque from, that's going to clog our arteries, essentially. Blood vessels damage and inflammation also favor the formation of blood clots. So as damage progresses, inflammatory response intensifies. So plaque instability and then it weakens the blood vessel wall. So the challenge is to maintain beneficial effects of inflammation, yet limit harmful consequences. So the fact that many diseases reflect an underlying inflammatory process, yet inflammation is critical to the immune response, presents a challenge to identify factors that will both protect the beneficial effect and limit the harmful effect. So, it kind of feels like inflammation kind of feels like one of those oxymoron things. It reflects on a lot of the chronic stuff, but there's also a good side to it. So there is um a lot of research and things still going into um inflammation. So now we're going to talk about diet and inflammation. Research suggests that certain dietary components may modulate key inflammatory pathways. Research is still currently being conducted investigating the effects of dietary components on inflammation. So there's still a little bit of investigating going on of the dietary components and how they affect your inflammation. So possible pro-inflammatory dietary factors include excess calories, which when I read through this, didn't really surprise me because excess calories kind of mean that we're adding a risk factor for obesity. Saturated in trans fats, having an excess of those is going to lead to that atherosclerosis. And then highly processed foods. So the processed meats are higher in saturated fat, higher in sodium, which could lead to the hypertension. And then the highly refined carbohydrates. So having those, they have fiber and other beneficial nutrients. The highly refined carbohydrates are often, however, high in added sugars, saturated, and trans fats. Possible anti-inflammatory dietary factors are found in fruits, vegetables, whole grains, lean protein foods, so lean meats, poultry, pork, fish, meat, beans, nuts, low fat and fat-free dairy, and then the healthy fats. Healthy fats include omega-3s found in fatty fish such as salmon, sardines, mackerel, cod, herring, lake trout, canned light tuna, walnuts, and flaxseed. These things increase the anti-inflammatory compounds and decrease the pro-inflammatory compounds. Then we have our monosaturated fats, which we can find in almonds, hazelnuts, peanuts, sesame seeds, olive oil, canola oil, avocado oil, and peanut oil. And these also increase the anti-inflammatory compounds. Vitamins and minerals. So vitamin C is really good for antioxidants, reduces the oxidative damage and reduces pro-inflammatory compounds. Vitamin E, selenium would go in that same kind of area there. The magnesium, the magnesium, which is kind of from whole grains, dark leafy vegetables, different things like that. They are known, a deficiency in those could increase the pro-inflammatory compounds. And then the zinc, that's an antioxidant, which regulates pro-inflammatory compounds. A deficiency in zinc will increase the pro-inflammatory compounds. Having fiber in your diet decreases those compounds. The phytonutrients that we may find, they include the polyphenols and the carotenoids. Those things increase the anti-inflammatory compounds and decrease the pro-inflammatory compounds. And the polyphenols, that's going to be your fruits, like your cherries, your cranberries, vegetables that include yams, kale, potatoes, and then carotenoids we all kind of associate with carrots. And then pro and prebiotics, which we talked about last week a little bit. They increase anti-inflammatory and decrease pro-inflammatory compounds. So as if we're eating right, we're doing what we can, chances are we're doing little things that could potentially increase our anti-inflammatory compounds that could decrease our inflammation. So making sure that we're getting our vitamins, fruits, vegetables, fiber, and eating the right way can have a huge effect on our inflammation, potentially. Um, However, at the present time, the research to support specific dietary recommendations regarding inflammation is lacking. More research, so more research in the areas that we need, what foods and what food components. So what we talked about, the research seems to be leading that way, but there needs to be a little bit more research on those, how much we're getting, how often we're getting it. So different things like that. Um, Diet and inflammation, a little bit more on diet and inflammation. Currently, the best advice is to adopt a healthy dietary pattern. So including a variety of nutritious foods. So make fruits and vegetables half of your plate. Choose a variety of brightly colored fruits and vegetables. Make your plate pretty, make it fun. Because if you can make it fun, you're more likely going to enjoy it. Make half of your grains whole grains. Vary your protein. So choose lean proteins. Make sure you're including things like fish and beans, lentils, nuts, and seeds. Kind of move towards a low fat or a fat-free milk or yogurt. Choose your healthy fats. Um, choose the ones high in omega-3 and those monosaturated fats we talked about. And then limit foods and beverages high in sugars, saturated and trans fats and sodium. Diet and inflammation, or diet and the immune system. A healthy dietary pattern also provides the nutrients needed to support a healthy immune system. So, calories, protein, omega-3s, vitamin A, C, E, D, B6, B12, folate, zinc, selenium, iron, magnesium, copper, pre and probiotics. These are all, the things that we need, because the immune system is sensitive to subtle changes in your nutritional status. So poor nutritional status can compromise your immune system. A strong immune system depends on adequate nutrients. So a healthful diet has an important role in maintaining your immune system. And then, like I said, the list that I just read to you, these all have a strong role in maintaining a healthy immune system. So, getting all of those, watching your calorie intake, all of these things are great tools to make sure that we're keeping our immune system healthy. Other lifestyle factors that could be related to our inflammation, regular sleep, regular physical activity. I got ahead of myself. Regular physical activity, it's going to lower that inflammation. It's also going to help you maintain a healthy weight. And then adequate sleep, making sure that we're getting the amount of sleep that we need, and then managing our stress, because if we stay stressed, we are suppressing our immune system. It's making it weaker because all of our systems are flowing and you're just overwhelmed. So, with that, I hope that we've kind of learned a little bit about the link between diet and inflammation, and learned that inflammation may not always be the best word, but it's not always a bad thing. And just remember to make sure we're having a healthful diet, doing what we can, because if we're taking care of our immune systems, then we have a better chance of taking care of managing inflammation. So, thank you, and I hope to see you all next week.